Hi everyone, I'm Matt and welcome back to Toylytics, where we take a look at the analytical side of toy collecting. Now that the calendar has turned to April 2024, the data is in and it's time to take a look at the secondary market for Mythic Legions action figures over the first quarter of 2024. And in this video, we're going to look specifically at the Arethyr wave. Now, if anybody needs a refresher on the Arethyr wave, one of the most popular waves of figures, some really sought-after figures in the entire Mythic Legions line, went up for pre-order in July of 2019 before the dark times, and then was delivered sometime late 2021 into 2022 after the COVID-related delays. So none of these figures are really available at retail anymore. The secondary market's the only place to get them, so that's why it's always interesting to look and see how the prices have evolved over the past 3 months for these particular figures. So let's get into the data. Right, so here we have an overall view of the units that were sold, and again, all of this is off of eBay. So looking here, it is pretty stable for most of the figures as we see quarter 3 2023, quarter 4 2023, and then into quarter 1 of this year. A lot of the sales figures are relatively the same. You can see Magnus has fallen a little bit, only 9 sold this quarter versus 18 and 13 in the previous quarters. One significant increase, though, is in the Arethyr and Aethon 2-packs. Only 7 were sold in the second half of 2023 combined, and this quarter 15 were sold. Now, that probably, if you've been following, on the Cabal and some of the other news, that probably has something to do with the fact that some of these 2-packs were on the Four Horsemen table at various shows recently, which makes a lot more sense as far as why these are selling on the secondary market. But in general, a lot of stability here overall. As you can see, a lot of the figures selling basically about the same as they were. Hadriana's fallen a little bit from quarter 3 2023 as 20, and then 12 in quarter 4, and then still 13 in quarter 1 of 2024. So not real high there, but in general, a lot of stability overall, and still a lot of demand then for the Arethyr figures. Looking at it in a little bit more detail as far as month-by-month sales are concerned, just to get a general sense of how many of these are sold in a month on eBay. The highest figure sold is generally Arethyr month by month, selling anywhere between 7 and 11 units. Aethon is also sold pretty significantly, right? Anywhere between 3 or 4 up to 10 in February, kind of a run on him. But then, as you can see, the 2-pack has really increased significantly over the past month, and especially over just in March 2024. A lot of those went up for sale. Belphegor, still a lot of sales too, pretty popular figure, and then a lot of the other ones only sell a half dozen or fewer per month on average. Looking at the average prices, you can see, not surprisingly, the 2-pack is the highest price as far as figures in the wave are concerned, an average price of $239. Aethon himself, though, is selling for $175, which is pretty high, and we'll see that's a pretty significant increase compared to the previous 6 months. Balius, oh, by the way, I should mention, too, that these prices are only for quarter 1 2024. So I didn't want to look at historical prices overall. I wanted to see these are the most current prices over the past 3 months. All right, just to get a general sense of what these are selling for in recent times. Right? And then in the next sheet, we'll look at the entire history for all of these figures and get a sense of how these prices have been changing over time. So Aethon is selling pretty significantly, 175. That is much higher. We'll see in the next sheet. Balius also selling for 130. Again, as I mentioned before, you probably don't want to buy a Balius now in the secondary market. Just wait for a Deacon to come, because we know if you take off all of the gear that comes with Deacon, you have a Balius underneath, and you can get him retail price for about $65, maybe $70. A lot better than 130, unless you really, really need one now. Arethyr selling for 116. That's still pretty high. Hadriana, Belphegor, Magnus, all in that kind of $90 to $95 range. Magnus has fallen a little bit. Belphegor has risen. Right? So we'll see that a little bit more in the next slide or next sheet. Turtleshell Bone Sword, kind of a special thing. Only a few of those sell, right? So pretty high price as far as those are concerned. Red Shield Soldier selling for about 80. Forthog and Hellfire Goblin at 75 to 80 or so. Malifar pulling up the rear, but he has increased significantly. We'll see that. And then again, the extras like the wings and the feet packs still selling for pretty good prices overall. So these are pretty high, although I'm not sure anymore how much the hands and feet packs are going to sell because we're getting so many hands with the new figures. So I don't know how much of a demand we're going to see there, but the wings are probably going to be always in demand, at least to some degree. All right, let's take a look at the actual sales for each individual figure. Let's look at Athon first. So here's Athon. You can see that his price has risen pretty significantly over the past 3 months in particular. Over 2023, he was selling anywhere between about $100 and $150 or so dollars, maybe a little bit more in some cases. But in 2024, very few. I mean, the cheapest one sold for $115, and very few have sold for even less than $130. You're talking, at least $150 all the way up to $230. In some cases, again, that's just Athon, not the 2-pack. Okay, so he has risen in price pretty significantly. If you find one for a good price, it's probably a good idea to jump on it if you need one. And again, he's a really unique horse, so if you want that look and something for Arethyr to ride, probably makes sense to try to pick one up while he's still available. Now we have Arethyr. The prices overall for Arethyr have been pretty stable, as you can see. Maybe going up a little bit, but definitely not as much as Athon. So last year he was selling for around, I'd say 80 for the most part, up to about 120. This year he's selling a little bit more, like 90 to about 130. So maybe about $10 higher on average for Arethyr overall. But still, for as good of a figure as it is, it's nice to see at least he has some stability in his price. Now, Arethyr and Athon 2-pack, as you can see, we have a lot more dots here, or points in the graph for 2024 than we had in the past, but overall the price is around the same. I mean, somebody got a really good deal here for $142, but overall the 2-pack selling generally between about $195 and $280, right? So pretty significant range in there, but if you can get the 2-pack for anywhere between $200 and $240, I think you're doing pretty well, maybe even $250. This is one where I need to start watching these on eBay because I definitely need one. I have the other two packs that have been released and Necronominus on order, but I want to make sure that I get this one to actually complete the set, as a lot of people I'm sure have the same idea. Here's Balius. So overall, again, his price is increasing pretty well too. In 2023, you could get him for about 90 to 110 in a lot of cases, although he was also selling for 120 to 150 as well. But in general, in 2024, he's often selling for that 120 to 150 range. Very few sales below $100. So that's Balius. Take a look at Belphegor, and we'll see his price increase pretty significantly here. So in 2023 he was selling mainly between about $55 up to about $85 to $90, and now in 2024 none have sold for anything less than $78. And the highest price isn't all that high, but you're not finding him for $55 or $60 anymore. It seems to be about $78 to $80 as the lowest, all the way up to about $100, except for this significant overpay here, probably an international sale, which has some significant shipping costs. That's often why you see those outliers, but because I do have the test shots also taken out of here too. The wings, I'm not going to bother with them. Again, there's not very many sales to look at. Right, so we'll move on to Hadriana. Hadriana kind of holding steady, not as many sales maybe as we saw earlier in 2023, but again the price is relatively stable. You can see some loose Hadriana figures going between about $68 and $90, but then some newer ones. If you want a newer one, it seems to be about $105 to $110 overall for her, and that's pretty much in line with how it has been over the past 9 months. Hands and feet pack, same thing. I'm not going to bother with those because again, very few are sold. Looking at the Hellfire Goblin, as you can see here, we have sales from 2023 that were just above retail or right at retail. Now you can't really get him for less than $60. So most recently he's going between about $60 and about 85 at the highest. I'd say about 80, right? So 60 to 80, if you see him in that range and you want him, I think that's probably a pretty good deal for the Hellfire Goblin. Probably not going to go down too significantly beyond that. Here's Magnus. Kind of interesting to see the price overall decreasing on him. while there was a huge range in 2023, you could get them for about $70 in some cases, all the way up to new ones going for twice that, 140. Now we have, again, some newer figures going for that $70 to $90 range, but then the highest ones that have been sold in 2024 are only like 113, right? So, his price overall, I think, has come down compared to where it was in the past. Maybe people are deciding that they don't want to overpay; they're just going to wait for other nights that are coming there, but they're deciding not to spend the 120 to 140 like people were in late 2023. Looking at Malifar, you could see kind of the opposite, right? Before, we were able to get him even for below retail, right? Below $50 in some instances, but generally between $50 and $60 was a pretty reasonable price for Malifar. Now in 2024, the cheapest ones are about $60, other than this loose one, and you're going all the way up to $75, right? So $60 to $75 seems to be the range for Malifar, similar to the Hellfire Goblin. I'd say if you see him for $60 to $70, that's probably a pretty good price for him. Red Shield Soldier. Again, price kind of like Magnus is coming down. People aren't paying that 110 to 115 anymore. They're paying somewhere around about 100 all the way down to like 65, right? So the price is kind of reduced in variability. People were paying in that $70 to $90 range before in some instances, but now it's more likely that you're able to get a Red Shield Soldier for somewhere around $75 to $100 more so than it was in the past. And then finally, we'll skip the turtle shell because, again, like one sale recently. Vorthog is the last one we'll look at here. And again, his price is pretty stable. You're not seeing him, though, for the $60 to $70 as much anymore as you were. I mean, a few sales here, but mostly he's looking 70 all the way up to about 90. Again, pretty significant overpay here, but 70 to 90 is the range for Vorthog, and that's pretty much been where he's been in late 2023 as well. So that is going to do it for the Arethyr wave. Again, please stay tuned for future videos. We're going to take a look at other waves as well and see how they were doing in the first quarter of 2024. Please contact me at toylytics@gmail.com if you have any thoughts about graphs or analysis that you would like to see. I'm always open to suggestions, and hope to see you again soon. Take care, and I'll see you in the next one.